Hey guys, it's Deltib from deltiasgaming.com, and we're here to look at the Vanguard. The Vanguard is one of the best classes in the game. As you can see from this gameplay right here, I'm just destroying stuff. Even with 3 healers, they can't survive. You're basically an indomitable fortress, moving around, blowing people up, slowing, stunning, and doing a lot of damage. It's an easy class to play. It's hard to master, but it's a lot of fun to jump into right away, and I recommend using it. Its strengths are durability, utility, and DPS. Some of the limitations are the range isn't that long, though you can hit up to 30 meters, and you don't have a long mez, but all the strengths make up for the weaknesses, and we'll get into more of that later. Our first section here, we're going to cover the shield specialist tree, which is the far left tree. It's really good. You have a lot of survivability. The problem is that I run a hybrid 19270 shown in this video because you get the AoE reduction in the middle tree and it has still decent damage and a lot of utility. The main tanking tree relies on shield and absorb, which is good because that affects your guarded target. It has a lot less DPS than the other trees, obviously, because it's tanking. So it's not going to do a lot of damage, but you're going to survive, and you're going to take a lot of damage for your other party members, which is the whole point. As a tank, you don't just throw guard on someone and leave it there and just let them go do their own thing. You're swapping guard, looking at the health bars to see who's lowest. In this video, no one's really taking damage, so it's kind of hard to swap guard, but as you can see, they're not killing me anytime soon. So the whole goal is to keep taunts up, slow the enemy, stun them, just being really annoying, and swap guard as needed to prevent other allies from dying. As you can see, that Sage is dying, so I swap guard to him, try to get him to stay alive, and it works. So that's the basic premise of it. Go over gears and specs here. As you can see, this is the full tank spec that I run. There's a lot of variations, but I try to run this. I don't like running full tank on the Vanguard. It's just not my thing. It just doesn't feel very PvP. It feels more PvE. But some key abilities you get that are limited to the tanking tree is the Storm, which is basically your leap. That's really good. And then Energy Blast you want to keep up to increase your shield and absorb. So that's really important for the tanking tree. But like I said, I don't like running it. And the reason why is you don't get shock absorbers, which is basically a huge part of PvP with all the melee damage coming in, or even range. The area stuns is so important to basically mitigate. So 30%, I would take that on top of extra shield and absorb, and that's why I run this spec. This is 1927. This is what I run. It's good for solo rated because it lists you as a DPS too, and so you can basically tank, be listed as a DPS, and I've got a lot of wins running this. The main part of the build is riot gas. That's your basic big slow, and they suffer a lot of melee and range accuracy loss, so you can prevent a lot of damage actually by doing this. Another thing that I liked is the defensive measures, which makes Harpoon basically immobilization, and your stealth scan can immobilize targets. So if an operative smuggles people in, I've gotten a lot of them just stealth scanned, and their whole team is basically immobilized for a few seconds. They don't know what's going on, and a lot of people don't take that, so they don't know how to deal with it. Another thing is good is you got your armor increased by 16%. I do take the overcharged cell capacitor, which is basically increase in damage, because I do a lot of damage over time, even if I am tanking with this, so that's important. On the middle tree, what's important is this frontline defense, which is lowering the cooldown of Riot Strike. So as I'm guarding someone, I'm making sure that I'm kind of close to the healer, and I'm just running over there and interrupting them over and over and over as needed. So make sure you're doing that. Hold the line. That's also your big one. It increases iteration. It's almost always up. My tanking gear set, which we'll get to in a second, I run the 2 and 2 piece set bonus. So I run the combat medic 2 piece and then the other 2 piece for the middle tree because I want the extra hold the line. So it reduces the cooldown by 5 seconds, meaning it's up every 25 seconds. It's almost always up as a tank because you need that extra speed. You need to go help people. You need to peel. You need to be immune to movement and parent effects. So that's really important as a tank. Now, to get up to the shock absorbers, you have to take 1 point somewhere, which is kind of right here. So you can still get the 2 stacks, but it's not guaranteed. The 3 stacks, excuse me. So I try to get the stacks up before I go into combat, then switch into ion cell to guard. It's just kind of a trick you can do. So we'll go over here to SWTOR Mr. Robot. Look at some of my gear. It's basically the same layout in almost everything. The mods I use are the exact same one. So it's the high endurance, absorb rating, weighted BX. The BX is the high endurance, and it gives you the absorb that you're going to need. And then the enhancement has the shield rating, absorb, and high endurance. I can get up to about 42k health when it's bolstered. It shows 41k here, but bolstered for some reason I'm at 42k health with the stem on. So you're going to have a lot of damage mitigation. You're going to have a lot of HP. The main thing is don't be a tank that sits around and does nothing. Be proactive. You know, use your harpoon offensively and defensively. If someone needs a peel, go run away, rip that defensive target down, slow them, stun them, and then switch guards a lot. Don't just put a guard on your healer and just never switch it. Remember, you're supposed to be watching health bars too. That's why tank is very hard. You have to watch health bars, you have to watch the enemy targets, you have to watch for interrupts. It's probably the hardest thing to play if you're a really good tank. So in PvP, just be aware of that. It's going to be hard, but tanking is a lot of fun. You'll see some more gameplay videos, but that's what I run. So 1927 is the best that I found for tanking, and you know, he may disagree with me, but riot gas, harpoon's really important. Just use that stuff defensively and you'll have a great success. Alright, so the basic rotation offensively is very simple. Using the 1927 build, it's very similar to the tactics build. You're essentially going to use your sticky grenade and hammer shot while closing. Then you're going to gut them to slow them. Stock strike, high impact bolt, and then ion pulse when you don't have that up. So it's very simple. You know, harpoon them to close the distance and immobilize them. It's very simple, so it's nothing complex. Now for defensively, essentially you're going to use riot gas or oil slick like I did there when you get a cluster of them, 2 or more. And then you carbonize to slow them and stun them even more in that oil slick. When they're starting to attack you, first thing I use is reactive shield, and then next is an adrenal. As soon as my health gets below 50%, and if I know I don't have a healer, I'll use a med pack. Now the reason I use it right away is because 1, I want the cooldown to start, and 2, I know I have adrenaline rush and reserve, so I can use that if my health dips below 30%. So that's basically it. You kind of rinse and repeat, and your main thing is just kind of keeping your slows up on the opponents and swapping guards. So nothing too complex, and as you can see, I'm pulling people. That's my main thing, is to try to slow them, mitigate them, make their life hell.
Frog dog down! Frog dog down!
Alright, now we're going to show some tactics highlights. My favorite tree by far. This is what I use to get up to 1700 rating. It's nearly indestructible. You have AoE reduction, you have a reactive shield almost always up, you have tons of CC, you have great area damage, that's what it's based off of. The only problem is you have short range and it's really reliant on procs, so you got to be really careful on using those procs correctly. Your pulse cannon and your rocket punch are your bread and butter, so you have to use those together in a sequence in order to get the maximum effect. It's really focused on power and surge heavy, so it's easy to gear this guy, and it's just a lot of fun. You're going to do a lot of damage, a lot of AoE, and you're not going to take a lot of damage. So it's just one of those things. You want to be that Rambo that runs in there and gets in the action right away, as you can see that I do. And it's just a blast to play. So I recommend to play this spec starting out. Alright, here's the basic spec that I run for tactics, which is 836-2. It's not that complex, and it's a very easy spec to get used to. It has a lot of damage potential. You get 9% main stat bonus, which is huge. High impact bolt and shock strike are very important in the spec, so you got to make sure you take those 2 abilities. And then these 2 abilities right here, cell generator, that makes your energy management really easy. And then combat tactics gives you a free high impact bolt automatic crit. So that's why when it comes to gear, I don't run a whole lot of crit, because you get a lot of guaranteed crit and increased crit. And so that's just your basic build. And as far as gearing goes, it's pretty simple. I just do power, surge, and everything pretty much. Now the mods, I use the high power, the 29X, not the AX, because I don't need the main stack. So I want to run as much power as I can. I do run the augments reflex because I do get a 9% bonus. So that I do use. And when it comes to relics, I use the primary stat relic, and then also the power relic. So I don't really need the crit relic because I have guaranteed crit. So if that procs and I use my high impact bolt, that's just a waste of a proc. So I don't really recommend using that. And I don't need a whole lot of accuracy because high impact bolt is guaranteed crit, and if I miss it, it's not the end of the world because I'm more worried about AoE damage. So really it's just power, surge, everything. It's not too complex. And then your spec, there's a bunch of very different variations, but this is the simplest one. You can run this in Ion Cell and guard a healer if needed, so don't feel like you can't. You're not gonna do nearly as much damage, but you may win the match just because they don't have a guard and you do. So remember, you can switch to Ion Cell. Just carry a shield with you and some extra leftover mods, enhancements, and armorings to make it, have decent damage. But like I said, you'll lose a lot of tech power, but you may just win the match just because you can protect the healer. So this is your standard spec and gear. Alright, we're going to go over some of the tactics, rotations, and priorities because it's used in the tanking tree and also the tactics tree. It's very similar. So these are pretty easy to do, but we'll just follow me. So first thing to do is get your shoulder cannon up. It'll load 7 stacks. You can do that before the match even starts. When you're closing the distance, you're going to use sticky grenade, then your hammer shot until you're up close. You're going to use gut first because gut gives you more damage to the target while that ability's procced. So gut, then you're going to use your fire pulse, which procs a free stock strike. And you use stock strike, which procs a automatic crit on your high impact bolt. And then you're going to use pulse cannon if you have 3 stacks of pulse generator. So before I go into the match, I get my 7 stacks of my shoulder cannon and my 3 pulse generator. So throw it in there, close the distance with a hammer shot, gut them, pulse, stock strike, high impact bolt. Now I stun them, generator. Usually I'll do hold the line first. I'll use my crit buff, and I'll just use ion, spam it as much as I can, smashing those shoulder cannons. The dot wore out, so I peel back, and you're just rinsing and repeating. So I gotta keep the dot up, got my 3 stock strike, got my 3 stacks up. Another thing is, make sure you do hold the line before you do that, because you're gonna get knocked back a lot of times. So don't do what I'm doing. You got to use hold the line. We'll show you here. Sticky grenade. My energy's getting low, so I'm going to use an ability. So hold the line. Pulse. And that's just your basic rotation. It's nothing too simple, but it's just kind of one follows the other, follows the other. Alright, so this is the Void Star, which is already underway, and we're just crossing the bridge. I'm going to hit hold the line because that's my biggest utility as movement speed, and plus I don't want to get knocked off the bridge. And you can see when I get shoulder cannon up, I'm using it right away. I'm stunning usually with hold the line before I use my pulse generator because I want to get it off fully at that channel. Well, it's really important you do that. In this video you're really going to see how tanky this tree is. I mean, I'm not getting heals for a very long time and I'm just staying alive. And also, you don't go chase DPS or a healer. Like you saw that guy go off in the corner. I'm not going to go chase him and spend 30 seconds time off target. I'm going to kind of hold back, wait till he's closer, use a harpoon and stun him. Just basically cause him a lot of angst. So I'm going to wait till he comes to me. If he's out in his own, he's not healing either. So make sure to do that. So right now, I kind of see that I'm in trouble. My adrenal's going to be up here in a little bit. But not getting heals really, but I'm just going to do damage because people will die, and especially in this tree. And you can see I'm just not taking a whole lot of damage, and I'm doing a lot. And now they're coming out of the spawn again, so they got their healer getting back on him, pulling down that Sork, and I use my adrenaline rush as my health gets below 30, so we'll see if I can pull it out without dying. Once his reflex up, I know that I need to use AoE, so that's why I use my pulse, and we got him down, and I survived. Alright, lastly we come to the assault spec, or the heavy single target spec. It focuses around high impact bolts and stock strike and ion pulse to keep proccing that ability. It's huge single target damage and has good AoE because it has an AoE dot if you use my spec properly, which I've been playing 5, 5, 36. It's not as tanky as the middle tree. You don't have the AoE reduction, and some of the other cooldowns don't work as good. It does have better range with the dot on your auto attack or hammer shot, so you can use rail shot farther out, so that's kind of a bonus. It uses the 4-piece eliminator set, and plasma cell is the active cell, and it's just a little bit different gearing wise, but as you can see in this video, things will die. It's just a blast to play. There's flame everywhere and people are burning, so it's a good spec to play, but a little bit trickier because you're not going to stay up as easy. Alright, we're looking at the gear and spec of the assault tree. I play 5, 5, 36. Some people play 4, 6, 36. Just depends on what you want to do. I like this spec. It's a little more reliable. Regardless, you're going to get 9% main stat bonus, so that's a really big plus. You obviously want to take these couple things in the middle here. Electro shield I don't take, which is kind of controversial. It's just basically they take damage back when they hit you. I just don't think that's very effective comparatively to getting explosive surge reduced, plus making it an AoE ability that dots them. So I like that more, so that's why I take that. Some of the other things are just, you're not going to take endurance, you're not going to take the stealth down. I don't take that, but it's pretty a standard spec. It's not too complex. The complex part comes with gearing this guy. It is a bit different gearing wise because you're going to need accuracy. You're going to need some of those things that you don't need with the other specs. So I come to the assault spec here. So accuracy you're going to need some because your big ability is high impact bolt, white damage or weapon based damage, and you don't want that to miss because that is your heavy hitter. So I run basically a couple enhancements with accuracy in them, and I have them in the weapons. Accuracy and crit, the cute enhancements. You're also going to need to run some crit because with this spec you don't have the guaranteed crit in anything, so you really need to be reliable on your damage. So you're going to run a little bit of crit. I run about 230 stats of crit and 130 or so accuracy, so I'm really trying to get my accuracy to 95% and my crit chance to roughly 25 or 26%, right around there. I also run the crit relic and the main stat relic is the difference here. I want that to proc early and often, so that way my high impact bolt is more likely to crit and hit hard. Another thing that I do differently is the mods. I use the high aim mods. It has a little more endurance, which is not the best thing, but I want the extra main stat bonus to my crit, so I can get as much crit as I can versus the other specs where I don't really care about crit because I have guaranteed stuff. So that's the difference here, and then you can run some crit stuff in your implants or accuracy. No matter how you mix it up, just run a little bit of accuracy, a little bit of crit, and if you don't find that effective, you can always run power surge. That's a good build, but I like a little bit more reliable damage on the spec, so that's what I go with. Alright, the assault spec pyro rotation's a little bit more tricky than the other ones, just because it's really dependent on one proc. Essentially what you're trying to do is get 2 rail shots in a sequence is the biggest thing you're trying to do. So just before we get started, know that Ion Pulse and Stock Strike both proc a free rail shot. They have a chance of doing this. So if we look at the spec, Ion Pulse is 45 and Stock Strike is 60. So it just depends. Ion Pulse is 10 meter range. Stock Strike is 4. So if you're trying to kite someone, you're going to need to use the Ion Pulse to proc it. If you're far away, you're going to use Stock Strike. Usually when I'm going in, I'm going to throw a sticky grenade, obviously, and then either Assault Plastique or Incendiary round, one of the two next. Assault Plastique is a great dot, and it does a lot of damage over time. So you could do this, assault plastique, incendiary round, high impact bolts, stock strike, or ion pulse to get another one to proc high impact bolt. Some people don't like using incendiary round because it can add a lot more heat to your build, and you may not find it useful right off the bat, but for me, it's a really long dot, so if I'm going against a healer that can't mitigate that or purge it, I'm going to use it right off the bat to get that long dot before I go into my huge rotation. So it's going to look something like this. Sticky, salt plastique, get them burning, rail shot, stock strike, didn't proc, now it procced, bang. And so it's just, you can see my ammo is getting kind of low already, but so it's going to be kind of tricky to manage. So then wait about 4 seconds, it procced again, that's back up, gonna hit this a couple times, procced again, stock strike, and so you're just kind of centering everything around that stock strike and keeping the dots up. As you can see, you got those nukes up. I'm just trying to keep those dots up. Throw it in here, get that assault plastique dot back on them, another dot back up, boom. So keeping those 3 dots up at the same time, that target's going to take a lot of damage. I'm trying to keep my heat around 60%, as you can see. Get my proc back up, assault plastique, and that's going to blow up hard. Boom. So that's the basic gist of that. You're going to have to watch your heat a lot more versus the middle tree, and I find it a little bit more difficult to manage, but as long as you're using the free rail shot on cooldown, you'll do decent with the heat. Plus in PvP you're going to be CC'd, and that will reduce your heat too, so you're actually looking to be CC'd. But that's how I run it. There's probably a bunch of different ways to do it, and I found that's the most effective for me. Well, that's all I got. I hope you enjoyed this guide. No matter what spec you play, this class is a beast, so you'll enjoy it, and I hope this guide helps you out. If you have any questions, feel free to leave me a comment or anything, and subscribe. Thanks.